servants are listening. Please be seated. The readings are a little different for Advent than we're used to hearing in Advent, but we are continuing with a series of whys until the last why is next week. So this is the third in a series of whys. The first was why Christian? Why are you Christian? Did you have an opportunity to choose whether or not you'd be Christian? Or did it just kind of descend upon you? And if you had the opportunity to study, is there a possibility you'd be something other than Christian? And then there was why church? Why do you come to church? When it's so much easier just to roll over and go sleep. It's time to tithe, get a cup of coffee, and going back to sleep. Next week is why worship. Because there's a difference between coming to church and coming to church to worship. There are folks who come to church every week and have yet to worship. So why do we worship? And today it's why stewardship. Because next week we will have our in-gathering Sunday. And stewardship is a time when we usually hear about, between September and December when we beg for money so we can do the things that the church is called to do so the budget can be fixed. But stewardship, it's more than just money. In the reading this morning, the first reading, you heard from Genesis, human beings, those created by and in the image of God, have been given dominion, not domination, but dominion over everything that God has created. Dominion. They are called, as we hear in the gospel, to be stewards over all God has created for God's benefit, not our own. And it's interesting that when God has finished creation on the sixth day, everything that was ever going to be was already there. Human beings discover and create absolutely nothing. We may reconfigure, we may recycle, we may reform, reshape, but everything that was there was there. We don't add anything. We just put it in a different format, a different shape, a different configuration. Everything we are and everything we have belongs to God. Our children belong to God. They were given to us by God to raise in the fear of God, in awe of God. We are to raise them in a way that glorifies God. And as we look at the number of children being trafficked in this country and around the world, we are called to do something about that as the church. Our homes, our cars, the money in the banks, our 401 whatevers, our RIAs, all of that belongs to God. All of that has been entrusted to us, and we are to use every single bit of it for God's purposes. The parks, the oceans, the buildings that human beings have created, our own towers of Babel are to be used for God's purposes. If what we have glorifies us, we sin. Pride is sin. Lack of humility is sin. Living for our stuff is sin. A friend of mine tells a story about her husband who, sometimes people love their stuff. And he had a Jaguar. And he loved that Jaguar. He spent more time with that Jaguar than he did with his family. Making sure it's always clean, it was always shiny. He loved that Jaguar. Guess what? Jaguar was stolen. To date, no one has found not a piece of that Jaguar. We don't know where that Jaguar is. But when we love our stuff, sometimes the stuff has a way of disappearing. Our lives are to glorify God. Our very lives are to glorify God life at all. It doesn't matter what science says. It doesn't matter how many times people try to clone. Only God can create life. When God created the first human, that body just laid there. Right? It just laid there until God did what? Breathe. Shared God's breath with that body. The breath that animated the first human, God's breath animates us today. At the beginning of creation, God's breath swept over the waters. God's ruach, God's breath swept over the face of the waters, and then God said, let there be light, but God's breath started everything. In the book of Ezekiel, everybody knows about the valley of the dry bones. The bones were just there until what? Breathe. Breathe on them. The breath, God's breath gave them life. When God stopped sharing breath, and it doesn't matter if you have a brain, it doesn't matter if you have a heart, if you can see, if you can walk, if you can think. When God stops sharing God's breath with you, it is over. It is over. Because without God's breath, there is no life. And God's breath is all around us. As we walk around this neighborhood, summer and fall plants are dying back. And that's the way it should be, right? Plants have a season. And when it gets to be not their season, then they die back. But we also notice that some of the plants are hanging around a little bit too long. Right? The grass that should be brown and dormant is what? It's green. We're still saying, why do I have to cut the grass in December? Something is not right. There's a little bit off with the weather. It's impossible to put away summer clothes. Why? Because one day it's 30 degrees, and the next day it's 70 degrees. You actually have to get up. Don't even look at your cell phone, your app. You actually have to get up and open the door, and then go back and get dressed. Right? Because we just don't know. Across the country, we see droughts and fires, and then massive snowstorms that lead to water runoff and floods. We really need to check the weather because we just don't know. And whatever you want to call it, global warming, climate change, we human beings are doing something that is negatively affecting the climate, God's breath. 10, the 10 hottest summers. The 10 hottest summers in all creation have occurred since 1998. Not 1898, not 1798, not 1698, but 1998. There were 42 million environmental refugees in Asia and Pacific during 2010 and 2011. These people immigrated. They left their homes because the land would no longer sustain them. The weather was too trying. There were floods and droughts. They couldn't grow food. They could not herd their cattle. There are now more environmental refugees than political and war refugees combined. And unfortunately, experts predict that there will be over 150 million environmental refugees by 2050. People who say, I can't live here any longer. And where are they going to go? Come here, you're going to be up against a wall. Species are becoming extinct. The polar ice caps, those of you who've been to Alaska lately, they're gone. You can see polar bears. Why? Because the snow is gone and so they stand out. They're white for a reason, to blend in with the snow, but when there's no snow, they can't blend in. Every time we turn around, there is a salmonella or E. coli outbreak. Insects, bacteria, and other organisms that are supposed to die out during the cold don't die. And so when it gets warm again, they come back with a vengeance. In Tombra, Angola, they used to have a thriving fishing industry. And Angola should mean something to us on the East Coast, because as we look at 1619 and the White Lion that brought the first Africans to what we now know as Hampton, Virginia, they were from Angola. They were from Angola. But the fish are dying because the water temperatures are rising. And the little fish that are left for the people are being taken by the international conglomerates. We have a problem. The experts are saying that if the temperature rises 2 degrees Celsius, in some places it's already that, we will have catastrophic events all over the world. And so what type of world, what type of planet are we leaving our children? How many of you know Greta Thunberg, little Swedish, who sailed from Sweden here to New York on a boat that used solar panels and underwater turbines? She's bringing to bear what adults refuse to recognize or realize, that we are harming, she says, her planet. Her planet. And it's usually the children to say, look what you are doing. What are you leaving for us? And we need to understand what we are doing. And some folks say, well, you know, back when all this has happened in 2100, I won't be here. Well, most of us, around here won't be, but some of us may still be here. And so what type of planet are we leaving? More and more children, more and more people are suffering from asthma and respiratory diseases. God's breath is being affected. Do we care? When we look at stewardship, when we consider stewardship, the Episcopal Church has information about what stewardship is. And so I'm going to read. It says stewardship is more than just fundraising. It is a life-giving way we respond to God's call to interact with the world, both as individual believers and as communities of faith. Our participation in and commitment to our community of faith in the form of pledging, one way. Serving on the vestry, 2. Being a Sunday school teacher, 3. Or member of the choir, 4. And the list could go on, are all ways of being involved in stewardship. Even the ways we function outside our community faith, what we do at home. If you don't use fertilizers on your lawn, because all of that runs off into the watershed, right? So what we do in church and out of church is part of stewardship. The idea of stewardship as a way of life rather than only a season of fundraising can be joyously transformational. We didn't come to you once a year and beg you. But stewardship is a way of life, something that we just do because we are part of a community of faith, because we are followers of Jesus, that we understand that we've been given dominion over, that we've been given stewardship over. All of this for God's benefit would change how we think about stewardship. Stewardship is everything we do after we say, after we profess, I believe. Stewardship is at the heart of putting our faith in action. Stewardship is theology. What we know, what we believe about God and how God works in this world. The raising funds, that's a ministry. But stewardship is about what we think, what we know, what we believe about God. And so as we continue this season of giving, everybody knows that this Tuesday is what? Giving Tuesday. Everybody's begging. Everybody's begging. And at some point you go like, I can't. If I gave to everybody, I'd have nothing. And so we kind of pick and we choose. And as we continue to prepare for the Lord's coming, God's giving of himself for us in the season of giving, not going to tell you that you should tithe or even give to the church. That's between you and God. You know that everything you are and everything you have is God's, and God is asking you to give back just a little bit to continue God's mission in the world. And I'm not going to tell you that you should sacrifice, that you should first give to the church, that you should give to the church and then figure out how to pay for your medicine. If you need medicine, you better pay for your medicine first. And I'm not going to tell you that you should sacrifice and give to the church and figure it out, even pray on it, if you don't have any income. Do not make a debt to give to the church. And it's easy to make a debt to give to the church with all the apps. Because the apps ask you for what? Credit card number, debit card number. And so folks can go into debt because I need to give to the Lord. The Lord didn't ask you to be stupid. And so do not go into debt because someone says you need to sacrifice. There are other aspects of stewardship. There's time and there's talent. There are other aspects of stewardship. And in this season of giving, I am not going to answer any questions about whether it's 10% of time, talent, and treasure, or 10% of everything. I'm not going to go there. That's between you and God. And there are times when I'm not even sure you should give to the church. If the majority of the money you give goes to administration and paying bills, and that includes my salary and benefits, and not to God's mission. Unless the money you give that goes to administration and salaries and benefits, it's a direct connection between that and what the church is doing in the world. But I will tell you this, that the church is called to make a difference in the world, and if you don't hear anything else ever from me, I am always saying the church is called to make a difference in the world. And if the church doesn't make a difference in the world, there are better things to do with your time, your talent, and your treasure. This church, St. Luke's, can make a difference in this community, this diocese, this country, and the world. And I'm not sure if my vision for St. Luke's is the same as your vision. But St. Luke's can make a decided difference in the lives of the people in this city. St. Luke's can reduce the environmental footprint, the carbon footprint of St. Luke's by seeing whether or not, since we got the roof fixed, we can put solar panels up there. And reduce our bill, and also produce electricity that goes into the grid. St. Luke's can make this building, this property, more energy efficient, again, reducing the carbon footprint. St. Luke's can open this church to those who need some place to escape the elements at least 5 days a week. If folks gave up their time and their talent. There is so much this church, this branch of the body of Christ can do to ensure that this planet, this church, is here for our children and grandchildren, that they are able to breathe. That there is some place for them to gather as community so they can be changed, be sent out into the world, again, to change it, so they can carry God's breath out into the world. And you know, there's something about God. Something about God. Every day we wake up, every day God shares God's breath with us, we get another chance to do it right. Every day. We don't do it right today. If we wake up tomorrow, we got a chance to do it. If we wake up on Tuesday, we got a chance to do it. We wake up Wednesday, we have a chance to do what is right, what God is calling us to do. God shares God's breath with us. That is a blessing all by itself. Try breathing on your own. You can't breathe with a machine. They say you're breathing, but you're not breathing. Because as soon as somebody comes and trips that cord and it comes out the wall, you're gone. Try breathing. You know, folks want to get back in the sanctuary, and I want us to get back in the sanctuary. But there are some canaries in this congregation that when they go in there, they can't breathe because of the dust that is still in there. And so we need to get that dust out so people can breathe, so that their lungs are not negatively affected. And so if you want to get back in there, then we need to push to get the dust out. So everyone, not everyone is affected by the dust, but there are some people who are affected by the dust. After 5 minutes in it, they go, I can't breathe. That's stewardship. Making that sanctuary a safe place, a sanctuary for everyone who wants to worship in there. Stewardship. It is more than just money. And I am asking you to discern, to pray, to ask God what God wants you to do with all that God has entrusted to you for God's benefit. It's between you and God and nobody else. How are you going to be that steward we heard in the gospel, who not only takes care of what God has originally given, but then God gives even more? And so I ask you to pray on it, to discern how God is asking you to be a good steward in this season of Advent. Amen.